Hey everyone, if you're a contractor working in Maine, you know that figuring out all the bonding rules can sometimes feel, well, a little complicated. So, in the next few minutes, we're going to cut through all that confusion and give you a really clear roadmap to stay compliant. That way, you can focus on what you do best building. So, let's get right to it. The number one question for any contractor in the state: do you actually need a surety bond? Well, the short answer is it depends. It all comes down to the kind of work you do and the value of your contracts. So let's break down exactly what those rules are. All right, first things first, let's take a look at the big picture. Maine's approach is a bit different from a lot of other states, and really understanding the general setup is key before we get into the nitty-gritty for your specific trade. So here's the main thing to get right off the bat. Maine doesn't have one single bond that every single general contractor has to get. Nope. Instead, the rules are very specific, and they target certain trades and, this is the important part, projects that are over a certain dollar amount. Okay, so with that in mind, let's zero in on the most common requirement you'll see. It's called the Home Construction Contractor Bond, or HCC bond for short. If you do any kind of residential projects, you're going to want to pay close attention to this part. Here is the first number you absolutely need to remember: $3,000. The moment any of your residential construction contracts are valued over this amount, you are officially required to register as a home construction contractor. That's the trigger. So once you cross that $3,000 threshold, this is the very next number you need to know. You'll be required to secure a $5,000 surety bond. Now, the state does allow you to show proof of insurance as an alternative, but honestly, a bond is often the most direct and simple way to meet the requirement. The good news is, getting into compliance is a pretty straightforward four-step process. So, first, your contracts go over $3,000. Second, you get that $5,000 bond. Third, you file it with the Maine Office of Professional and Occupational Regulation. That's a mouthful, so everyone just calls it OPOR. And finally, just set a reminder to renew it every year. Simple as that. Okay, so we've got the HCC bonding down pat, but that's not the whole story in Maine. Let's broaden our view a little bit to cover some other projects and trades that have their own very distinct bonding rules. Now, this right here highlights a super important detail where people can get tripped up. Notice that both the HCC bond and the manufactured housing installer bond are for the same amount, $5,000. But, and this is a big but, you file them with different agencies. The HCC bond, as we said, goes to the OPOR, but the installer bond goes to the Department of Professional and Financial Regulation, or DPFR. Filing with the wrong one can cause some serious delays. Now, let's switch gears and talk about public projects. If you're bidding on state government work in Maine, this is the number that really matters: $125,000. Any contract that goes over this value triggers a whole different set of bonding requirements. And those requirements? They're all governed by something called the Maine Little Miller Act. What that means is, for any state public works project over that $125,000 mark, you have to get two separate bonds: a performance bond and a payment bond. And these are a big deal. Each one has to be for 100% of the total contract value. So, we've covered the what and the when. And I know this brings us to the most practical question of all, the one every single business owner asks: what is this actually going to cost me? Here is the most important thing to understand when it comes to cost. You do not pay the full bond amount. So for that $5,000 HCC bond, you are not paying $5,000. You only pay a small percentage of it, which is called the premium, and it's based mostly on your credit profile. So let's take a look at how this actually plays out for that standard $5,000 bond. As you can see, if you've got excellent credit, you're looking at a rate of just 1 to maybe 2%. That means your total cost for the year is only $50 to $100. It's a really clear example of how much it pays off to maintain a strong credit score. All right, we've covered a ton of ground here. So now let's just pull it all together and summarize the key steps you need to take to make sure you're totally compliant. So what are the big takeaways? Just remember these 4 things. First, always check if your contracts are creeping over that $3,000 threshold. Second, make sure you identify the exact right bond for your specific trade. Third, remember that your cost is just a small premium based on your credit. And finally, double check that you're filing with the correct state office, whether that's the OPOR or the DPFR. And that's our quick breakdown of Maine contractor bonds. Now that you've got the information you need, your next step is really simple. You can get your surety bond quote in just a few minutes over at buysuretybonds.com. Thanks for joining me.